Hello, everyone. We invite you to listen to interesting scientific facts that will help you fall asleep gently and at the same time learn something new. Relax, close your eyes, and let a calm voice guide you into the world of knowledge and sweet sleep.
Part 1. The Roof of the World.
Tibet is often called the Roof of the World, a poetic description of its extraordinary elevation and vast open skies. Most of the region lies on the Tibetan Plateau, the highest and largest plateau on Earth, with an average altitude of over 4,500 meters above sea level. At such heights, the air is thin and clear, and the light appears softer, almost crystalline. For centuries, travelers have described the sensation of standing in Tibet as feeling closer to the sky than to the ground. Geographically, Tibet is closely linked with the mighty Himalayas, the world's highest mountain range. These mountains form a natural wall along the southern edge of the plateau. Beyond their snow-covered peaks lies Nepal, while to the north stretch vast grasslands and cold deserts that seem endless and untouched. The capital city of Tibet is Lhasa, a city that has long been a spiritual and political center. In Lhasa stands the iconic Potala Palace, once the winter residence of the Dalai Lamas. Rising above the city like a white and red fortress, the palace appears almost dreamlike at sunrise and sunset, when golden light gently touches its ancient walls. Tibet's landscape is characterized by wide valleys, turquoise lakes, snow peaks, and wind-swept plains. The sky often feels immense and deeply blue. Because of the high altitude and thin atmosphere, stars at night appear especially bright and close, creating one of the most spectacular night skies in the world. The plateau is sometimes described as the third pole because it contains the largest store of ice outside the Arctic and Antarctica. Many of Asia's major rivers originate here, including rivers that flow through China, India, and Southeast Asia. In this way, Tibet quietly nourishes millions of lives far beyond its borders. Life at high altitude requires adaptation. Over thousands of years, Tibetan people developed unique physiological traits that allow them to thrive in lower oxygen conditions. Their traditional homes are built to withstand cold winds, and their daily rhythm follows the natural cycles of sunlight and seasons. In its vastness and silence, Tibet offers a sense of stillness that feels timeless. The wind carries the soft flutter of prayer flags, and distant mountain ridges fade gently into the horizon. The environment itself encourages reflection and calm, making it one of the most serene regions on Earth. In the next part, we will gently explore the rivers and sacred lakes of Tibet, waters that reflect the sky like mirrors and carry centuries of spiritual meaning. Part 2. Sacred rivers and high mountain lakes. Water in Tibet is both a geographical force and a spiritual symbol. From the glaciers of the Tibetan Plateau flow some of Asia's most important rivers. These waters begin quietly, as melting snow beneath vast skies, and then travel thousands of kilometers, sustaining entire civilizations far beyond the mountains. One of the most significant rivers rising in Tibet is the Yarlung Tsangpo, which later becomes the Brahmaputra River as it flows through India and Bangladesh. In its upper reaches, the river winds gently through broad valleys surrounded by snow peaks and ancient monasteries. The river valley has long been considered the cradle of early Tibetan civilization, where agriculture first flourished in the region's relatively milder climate. The Tibetan Plateau is also home to some of the highest large lakes in the world. Among the most beautiful is Yamdrok Lake, famous for its bright turquoise waters. Seen from above, the lake appears like a ribbon of blue silk laid across the brown and golden hills. The water reflects the sky so clearly that it often seems as though the heavens have descended to earth. Another vast and sacred lake is Namtso, located at an elevation of more than 4,700 meters. Namtso is one of the highest saltwater lakes in the world. In summer, pilgrims travel to its shores, walking slowly along the water's edge in quiet meditation. The stillness of the lake, framed by distant snow mountains, creates a sense of immense calm. To the west lies Lake Manasaravar, one of the most sacred lakes in several Asian spiritual traditions. For centuries, pilgrims have journeyed long distances to bathe in its clear waters, believing them to possess purifying qualities. Nearby rises Mount Kailash, considered sacred in multiple religions, further deepening the spiritual significance of the region. Glaciers play a vital role in Tibet's ecosystem. Often referred to as the Water Tower of Asia, the plateau contains tens of thousands of glaciers. These frozen reservoirs slowly release water during warmer months, feeding rivers that support agriculture, cities, and forests far downstream. The seasonal rhythm of melting snow and ice shapes life not only in Tibet, but across much of Asia. The lakes and rivers of Tibet are often surrounded by wide, silent landscapes. Winds move gently across the water's surface. Prayer flags flutter from nearby passes. Wild birds migrate across these high-altitude wetlands, adding subtle motion to otherwise still scenes. In winter, many lakes partially freeze, forming delicate patterns of ice that shimmer under the pale sun. In this elevated world of sky and water, sound carries differently. The distant rush of a river or the quiet lapping of lake water feels amplified by the open space. The environment encourages slow observation and contemplation, as if nature itself is speaking in a softer voice. In the next part, we will explore the monasteries, traditions, and daily rhythms of Tibetan culture, a world shaped by devotion, resilience, and centuries of spiritual practice.
Part 3. Monasteries, spiritual traditions, and daily life. Tibetan culture has been shaped profoundly by spiritual practice. For more than 1,000 years, monasteries have served not only as religious centers, but also as places of education, art, medicine, and community life. These institutions were traditionally built in remote and elevated locations, often perched on hillsides or nestled within mountain valleys, reinforcing the connection between landscape and contemplation. One of the most important religious sites in Tibet is the Jokhang Temple, located in the heart of Lhasa. Founded in the 7th century, it is considered one of the holiest temples in Tibetan Buddhism. Pilgrims from across the plateau travel long distances to walk around the temple in a ritual circuit known as Kora. Many perform full-body prostrations as they approach, expressing devotion through steady and repetitive movement. Tibetan Buddhism developed as a unique form of Buddhism, integrating earlier indigenous beliefs with Indian Buddhist philosophy. Over time, distinct schools emerged, each with its own monastic traditions and lineages. Monks and nuns dedicate years to the study of philosophical texts, meditation practices, and ritual arts. Monastic debate, a dynamic and formalized exchange of ideas, remains a central educational method. During debate sessions, monks stand and clap their hands sharply to emphasize logical points, creating a rhythmic sound that echoes through monastery courtyards. Prayer is woven into daily life. Cylindrical prayer wheels, often inscribed with sacred mantras, are spun clockwise as individuals walk past them. It is believed that each rotation symbolically releases blessings into the world. Prayer flags, printed with prayers and symbols, are hung across mountain passes and rooftops. As the wind moves through the fabric, it is thought to carry prayers outward across the landscape. Art and symbolism hold deep meaning in Tibetan culture. Monasteries contain elaborate wall paintings, known as tankas, depicting spiritual figures, mandalas, and cosmological diagrams. These artworks are created according to precise iconographic rules and are intended not merely for decoration, but for meditation and teaching. The use of color is deliberate. Gold represents wisdom, blue symbolizes vastness, and red conveys strength and protection.
Daily life in traditional Tibetan communities has historically revolved around agriculture and herding. Barley is the staple crop, used to make sampa, a roasted flour mixed with tea or butter. Yak herding remains central in many rural areas. Yaks provide milk, meat, wool, and fuel in the form of dried dung, which is used for heating in the high-altitude climate. Homes are typically built from stone or mud brick, with flat roofs designed to withstand wind and snow. Inside, family altars often display small statues, butter lamps, and framed images of respected spiritual leaders. The lighting of butter lamps is both practical and symbolic, representing the illumination of wisdom. Festivals bring color and music to the plateau. Masked dances performed by monks during annual celebrations combine storytelling, ritual, and community gathering. Traditional instruments such as long horns and drums produce deep, resonant sounds that carry across open valleys. Despite modern changes and political shifts, many aspects of Tibetan spiritual and cultural life continue to reflect a profound relationship between people, belief, and landscape. The rhythm of prayer, the turning of wheels, and the quiet study within monastery walls contribute to a culture defined by endurance and reflection. In the next part, we will explore the wildlife and natural ecosystems of Tibet, from snow leopards to high-altitude grasslands, and the delicate balance of life on the world's highest plateau. Part 4. Wildlife and high-altitude ecosystems. The natural world of Tibet is shaped by altitude, cold temperatures, strong winds, and intense sunlight. Despite these demanding conditions, the Tibetan Plateau supports a remarkable diversity of wildlife, uniquely adapted to life at high elevation. The region's ecosystems include alpine grasslands, cold deserts, wetlands, and glaciated mountain slopes, each providing habitat for specialized species. Among the most elusive inhabitants of the plateau is the snow leopard. This rare predator moves silently across rocky mountain terrain, perfectly camouflaged against stone and snow. Its thick fur, long tail for balance, and powerful limbs allow it to survive in steep, icy landscapes. The snow leopard has become a symbol of Tibet's wild and remote character. Another iconic species is the Tibetan antelope, also known as chiru. Adapted to the open grasslands, it migrates across vast distances in search of seasonal grazing areas. Its dense underfur protects it from extreme cold, and its streamlined body allows it to move efficiently across the windswept plateau. The wild yak is one of the largest land mammals of the region. With long, shaggy hair and strong, curved horns, wild yaks are well suited to harsh winters and thin air. Domesticated yaks, closely related to their wild counterparts, have been central to Tibetan life for centuries, providing milk, meat, fiber, and transport. Large areas of northern Tibet are part of the Changtang, an expansive, high-altitude grassland and nature reserve. Changtang is home to migratory birds, wild asses known as kyang, and numerous small mammals that survive by burrowing beneath the surface to escape cold winds. Bird life is also significant in Tibet's wetlands and lakes. During migration seasons, species such as black-necked cranes gather in high-altitude marshes. These cranes are considered symbols of longevity and are often associated with cultural reverence. Their elegant movements contrast gently with the vast stillness of the surrounding landscape. Plant life on the plateau is adapted to short growing seasons and strong ultraviolet radiation. Many alpine plants grow low to the ground, forming dense mats that conserve heat and moisture. In summer, certain valleys briefly bloom with small but vivid wildflowers, creating subtle bursts of color against otherwise muted terrain. Climate plays a defining role in Tibet's ecosystems. Winters are long and severe, with temperatures dropping well below freezing. Summers are short, but can bring intense sunlight and rapid plant growth. The thin atmosphere results in dramatic temperature changes between day and night. In recent decades, scientists have paid increasing attention to the Tibetan Plateau because of its influence on regional climate systems. The plateau affects monsoon patterns across Asia, acting as a massive elevated landmass that shapes atmospheric circulation. Changes in glacier mass and permafrost conditions are closely monitored as they influence water availability for millions of people downstream. The ecosystems of Tibet demonstrate resilience balanced with fragility. Life here depends on delicate seasonal cycles, careful adaptation, and expansive, undisturbed spaces. In the quiet movement of a snow leopard across rock, or the slow migration of antelope across grassland, the plateau reveals a rhythm that is steady and enduring. In the next part, we will explore the history of Tibet, from early kingdoms and trade routes to its role within the broader story of Central and East Asia.
Part 5. History, trade routes, and cultural exchange. The history of Tibet unfolds across high mountain passes, fertile river valleys, and windswept plateaus. Though geographically isolated by towering mountain ranges, Tibet has long been connected to surrounding regions through trade, diplomacy, and spiritual exchange. The earliest organized Tibetan state emerged in the 7th century under the rule of Songtsen Gampo. During his reign, Tibet expanded its influence and established diplomatic ties with neighboring kingdoms. It was also during this period that Buddhism began to take root more firmly in Tibetan society, influenced by cultural exchanges with India and China. The development of a written Tibetan script marked an important milestone in the preservation of knowledge. Inspired by Indian scripts, the Tibetan writing system allowed religious texts, historical chronicles, and medical treatises to be translated and recorded. Monasteries became centers of scholarship, copying manuscripts by hand and safeguarding philosophical works for generations. Despite its remote geography, Tibet was connected to broader networks of exchange. Caravans traveled along branches of the Silk Road, carrying goods such as wool, salt, tea, and precious stones. One particularly significant trade relationship developed between Tibet and China through the Tea Horse Road, where Tibetan horses were exchanged for bricks of tea. Tea later became a staple in Tibetan daily life, often mixed with butter and salt to create a warming drink suited to the cold climate. Religion deeply influenced governance and social structure. Over centuries, spiritual leaders held both religious and political authority. The institution of the Dalai Lama became central in Tibetan society, representing a lineage believed to embody compassion and wisdom. Monasteries not only guided spiritual life, but also managed land, education, and local administration in many areas. Mountains held symbolic as well as geographic importance. Mount Kailash is regarded as sacred in several spiritual traditions, including Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Bon. Pilgrims from various cultures have walked the ritual path around the mountain for centuries, believing the journey to be an act of purification and reflection. Art and craftsmanship flourished alongside religious life. Thangka paintings, metal sculptures, and intricate mandalas were created with precise symbolic meaning. These artworks served educational purposes, illustrating cosmology, moral teachings, and spiritual paths. The blending of Indian, Nepalese, and Chinese artistic influences over time produced a distinct Tibetan aesthetic. Throughout history, Tibet experienced periods of expansion, fragmentation, reform, and transformation. Political dynamics shifted across centuries, shaped by internal leadership changes and interactions with neighboring powers. Yet, despite these changes, cultural continuity remained strong. Language, ritual, architecture, and artistic expression preserved a distinct identity rooted in high-altitude life and spiritual philosophy. The rhythm of caravan bells across mountain passes, the steady copying of manuscripts in monastery rooms, and the quiet gathering of pilgrims at sacred sites all contributed to a history defined not by rapid industrial growth,
but by endurance and spiritual orientation. In the next part, we will explore contemporary Tibet, examining modern developments, environmental challenges, and the evolving balance between tradition and change on the world's highest plateau.
Part 6. Contemporary Tibet, Change, Continuity, and the Modern Plateau. Contemporary Tibet exists at the intersection of tradition and modernization. While ancient monasteries, pilgrimage routes, and pastoral lifestyles continue to shape cultural identity, infrastructure development and technological change have transformed aspects of daily life across the plateau. The city of Lhasa illustrates this coexistence clearly. Historic neighborhoods and religious landmarks remain central to the city's character, yet modern buildings, paved roads, and expanding residential areas now surround them. Markets sell both traditional handicrafts and contemporary goods. Mobile phones and digital communication are common even in high-altitude regions once considered isolated. One of the most significant engineering projects affecting the region is the Qinghai-Tibet Railway, a railway line connecting the Tibetan Plateau with other major urban centers. Portions of the railway run across permafrost and at elevations exceeding 5,000 meters, making it one of the highest railways in the world. Special engineering solutions were developed to stabilize tracks and protect fragile ecosystems. Transportation improvements have increased tourism. Visitors travel to experience high mountain landscapes, monasteries, and sacred lakes. Tourism provides economic opportunities, but also requires careful environmental management to protect delicate ecosystems. High-altitude environments recover slowly from disturbance, and sustainable practices have become increasingly important in planning and conservation. Energy production has also evolved. In some rural areas, solar panels are used to provide electricity to homes and monasteries. The strong sunlight of the plateau makes solar energy particularly effective. Renewable energy initiatives aim to balance modernization with environmental preservation. Education and healthcare access have expanded in many regions. Schools combine national curricula with local cultural education, preserving language and heritage while introducing contemporary academic subjects. Medical services incorporate both modern clinical approaches and traditional Tibetan medicine, reflecting a dual system that continues to coexist. Environmental research on the Tibetan Plateau has intensified in recent decades. Scientists study glacier retreat, permafrost stability, and biodiversity changes. Because many major Asian rivers originate in Tibet, ecological shifts on the plateau have far-reaching implications. Monitoring stations collect data on climate patterns, helping researchers understand global atmospheric systems. At the same time, pastoral communities continue seasonal migrations across grasslands. Herding families adapt to new regulations, market systems, and infrastructure changes, while maintaining knowledge passed down through generations. In some regions, nomadic life has gradually shifted toward more settled patterns, influenced by economic and administrative developments. Cultural preservation efforts focus on language, performing arts, crafts, and religious architecture. Restoration projects maintain historic buildings, while artisans continue producing traditional tanka paintings, metalwork, and textiles. Festivals remain important communal events, blending ancient ritual forms with modern organization. Contemporary Tibet, therefore, cannot be described solely as ancient or modern. It represents an ongoing dialogue between past and present. High-speed trains pass beneath prayer flag-covered passes. Solar panels reflect sunlight near stone monasteries. Smartphones capture images of landscapes that have remained visually unchanged for centuries. The plateau continues to inspire reflection. Beneath expansive skies and along river valleys shaped by glaciers, life adapts steadily to new realities. Change unfolds gradually across a landscape defined by altitude and resilience. In the next part, we will explore Tibetan philosophy and worldview, examining concepts of impermanence, compassion, and interconnectedness that have shaped cultural understanding for centuries. Part 7. Philosophy, Worldview, and the Tibetan Understanding of Life. Tibetan philosophy has been shaped primarily by the development of Tibetan Buddhism, a tradition that blends classical Indian Buddhist thought with indigenous Himalayan elements. Over centuries, this philosophical system has influenced not only religious practice, but also ethics, medicine, art, governance, and daily behavior. At the heart of Tibetan thought lies the concept of impermanence. All phenomena, landscapes, emotions, relationships, and even civilizations are understood to arise, change, and eventually pass away. This principle encourages acceptance rather than resistance. In the high-altitude environment of the plateau, where seasons shift dramatically and survival depends on adaptation, impermanence is not merely an abstract idea, but a lived reality. Closely connected to impermanence is the concept of interdependence. Tibetan philosophy emphasizes that no being exists in isolation. Every action influences others, just as rivers that originate on the plateau nourish distant lands. This understanding fosters a worldview in which compassion becomes a rational response to interconnected existence. Compassion is central to Tibetan spiritual life. The ideal of the bodhisattva, an individual who seeks enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, guides ethical conduct. One of the most widely recognized figures associated with compassion is the Dalai Lama, regarded as a spiritual leader whose role symbolizes wisdom and benevolence. Meditation practices are structured and systematic. Monks and lay practitioners engage in analytical meditation, visualization, and mindfulness exercises. Monasteries serve as centers where philosophical debate refines understanding. Through dialogue and reflection, students examine logic, perception, and consciousness. The creation of sand mandalas illustrates Tibetan philosophical principles in visual form. Monks spend days constructing intricate geometric patterns from colored sand, only to ceremonially dismantle them upon completion. The act symbolizes impermanence and the transient nature of all forms. The sand is often released into flowing water, returning the artwork to the elements. Ritual objects and symbols carry layered meanings. Prayer flags, inscribed with sacred syllables, represent the wish that positive intention be carried by the wind. The spinning of prayer wheels reflects the belief that repetition and mindfulness shape inner awareness. These practices integrate philosophy into ordinary movement, transforming daily life into quiet contemplation. Tibetan medical theory also reflects philosophical principles. Traditional texts describe balance between elements within the body, influenced by mental and environmental factors. Health is viewed holistically, connecting physical well-being with emotional stability and ethical conduct. The landscape itself influences worldview. The vastness of the plateau encourages reflection on scale and humility. Mountains that appear eternal stand beside glaciers that slowly recede, reminding observers of both endurance and change. In this setting, philosophy is not separate from environment, but emerges from it. Modern Tibetan thinkers continue to interpret classical teachings within contemporary contexts. Dialogue with global philosophy, science, and psychology has expanded discussions on consciousness and ethics. Yet the foundational emphasis on compassion, awareness, and interconnectedness remains constant. In this elevated land of wide skies and quiet valleys, Tibetan philosophy offers a framework that integrates environment, community, and inner life. It presents not only a system of thought, but a way of perceiving existence as fluid, relational, and worthy of mindful attention.